If I've learned to appreciate anything over the last few weeks of this pandemic, it's the value of a warm and secure home. As more and more governments around the world tell us to stay indoors, it's important to recognize the major difficulties facing so many in homeless communities. Even before this global health emergency, homelessness has been a significant societal issue here in North America. According to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, more than 568,000 people were homeless on a given night in 2019, with potentially hundreds of thousands more left uncounted. In Canada, an estimated 35,000 people are homeless on an average night, with over 235,000 experiencing homelessness throughout the year. Without access to clean water and shelter, this already vulnerable population is at an even greater risk to exposure and infection by deadly diseases. As our theme this week is how communities fund programs that serve vulnerable citizens, the story of Medicine Hat, Alberta stands out as an example of how cities can provide services efficiently and sustainably. Beginning in 2009, this small city of 63,000 people adopted the Housing First approach, and in 2015, the city declared they had reached functional zero homelessness and have maintained that status since. With beginnings in New York City in the early 1990s, the concept behind Housing First is simple: to get those suffering from chronic homelessness off the street and into a secure and permanent home before trying to solve more complex issues like unemployment, substance abuse, or mental health issues. In contrast, the legacy approach to addressing homelessness is a lengthy process where one is often required to pass through a series of steep prerequisites before being deemed housing ready. Steps like demonstrating good behavior in shelters, specifically staying clean of drugs, then moving on to transitional housing, and then finally the possibility of a permanent home. The results from this approach are poor, and very few chronically homeless individuals secure permanent housing. In the 11 years Medicine Hat has been running their Housing First program, the city has provided free housing for more than 1,200 people, including over 300 children. While these numbers may be small in comparison to needs elsewhere, Medicine Hat serves as a valuable role model for other larger cities to follow. On the topic of funding, it's important to point out one aspect that sets this city apart from most, and that is its incredible wealth. Huge oil and gas reserves owned by the municipal government allows Medicine Hat to fund social programs like Housing First that many other cities can't. That said, this small, wealthy city has shown to be a successful proof of concept that this approach does work, and even demonstrates that Housing First has the potential to be significantly more cost-efficient than traditional ways of treating homelessness through temporary shelter and treatment as usual. The fact is that homelessness is often remarkably expensive for cities, resulting in increased emergency room visits, hospitalizations, overdose treatments, increased policing, and even jail. One report from Medicine Hat estimates it costs the city between $50,000 and $70,000 per year to keep someone on the street, compared to only around $20,000 to provide permanent housing. Another study from the University of New Mexico in 2015 showed that a Housing First approach saved the city of Albuquerque nearly $15,000 per person placed in housing compared to leaving them on the street. Another interesting point about Medicine Hat, and this one may come as a surprise, is its local politics. The local mayor claims it is, quote, arguably the most conservative town in Alberta, end quote, which, by the way, is clearly one of the most conservative provinces in Canada. For example, in the last general election held in December 2019, the Conservative Party swept 33 of 34 parliamentary seats in the province, including over 79% of the vote in the Medicine Hat riding. Initially, the Housing First program received a lot of pushback from the town's leaders, but after seeing the cost efficiency and positive outcomes of the new program as compared to the legacy model described as a Band-Aid approach, the mayor and others have since become some of its most ardent supporters. The takeaway here is that Housing First could be a solution in areas where political differences are an obstacle for tackling complex issues like homelessness, specifically when there is a tangible cost savings to taxpayers. In closing, When it comes to ensuring that everyone is treated with dignity and respect, safe and secure housing is a good place to start. To be sure, this approach might not work in every city or every situation, yet this small example from Canadian oil country shows what's possible when smart, cost-efficient programs succeed. Housing First may have high potential to address one of our society's greatest challenges.